Hi, Inês. How are you today?
Hi, David. I'm good. And you?
Good, good. Here from Montreal, and you are in
Brussels.
Brussels, Belgium. Very good. Uh, Super happy to have you here today. Inês, this is a live recording of a podcast episode, so we're gonna wait a little bit to see if someone watching can tell us whether the video and the audio is fine, whether we need to change the volume on our microphones. And also, I'll be checking at the same time if the live feeds are going well. But just so you know, right now we're in the pre-interview moment, so we'll wait a little bit to be sure everything's going fine. Also, for people who are on Twitter and Facebook, come join us on the YouTube channel. I will be closing the Facebook and Twitter feeds in a couple of minutes. But the conversation today is going to be a very interesting one that I haven't had yet on Papa PhD, and one that I believe you'll be anyway, you'll be interested in because it's about something that we all have, that we all use, but that maybe we can use better, and it's our voice, right, Inish?
Right, exactly. That's today's topic.
So it looks like everything is going fine. The feeds are going smoothly. So again, before I close the feed on Facebook and Twitter, I'll just ask you that if you want to take part in this live recording of an episode of the Papa PhD podcast, join us on go to YouTube, look for Papa PhD, and you'll find the live there. And then you can share your comments there and take part in this conversation. So I'll do that right now, and then we'll go on with the interview. So I'll do this and here. There we go. So without further ado, what I'm going to do, Inês, is I'll pause a little bit. I'll give a little intro, a little bio of who you are, and then we'll start our conversation. Again, the subject today is how to use your voice professionally as an academic. The title exactly was the importance of voice as an academic and beyond. And it'll be clear in a few minutes what this means. Inês has, as I will show you, has extensive experience working with people in different domains, including academia, helping them make the best use possible of their voice. And we'll learn about this today. So I'll pause a little bit. I'll give a little intro on who you are, Inês, and then we'll go
Mm-hmm.
from there.
Okay, deal.
Welcome to this new episode of Papa PhD. Today, I have the great pleasure of having with me from Brussels, Belgium, Inês Moura. Inês is an executive vocal coach with over 10 years of experience in helping leaders, business owners, experts, and academics take their voices to the next level. She believes that everyone has a voice that deserves to be heard, and we are going to be learning about how voice can help us today with Inês. Welcome to Papa PhD, Inês.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. Me too. Super, super excited. I learned about you through a former guest and friend of the show, Inês. Now she changed her name, Bartilotti, and I'm really really happy to have you here today because when I saw what you do, when I saw how you help people, it really struck me that you're kind of helping them use a tool that they've had for all their life. but
Exactly.
but that not all of them and not all of us are putting to use in the best way possible, specifically in your in the approach that you have when we're talking about public speaking and leadership and this type of more professional setting. But before we start talking about that, can you share with the listeners and with the viewers a little bit more about who Inês Moura is, what drives her, and what what brought you from your studies, from whatever training you got to becoming a vocal coach, uh, an executive vocal coach?
Well, it was a long journey, but I will try to make it short. So, in short, I studied speech and language therapy, which means that I have a mix between health and science background, because it's a health profession. But I in this field, in speech and language therapy, we often associated with helping children to speak better or with stuttering and so on. But there's one of these areas which is the voice use, and in specific the professional voice use. And in that we split in two parts: the artistic voice, the singers and actors, and then
Mhm.
the spoken voice, which is for politicians, leaders, experts, like every one of us.
Mhm.
Basically, we all use the speaking voice. And as you said, we born with this. Like it was an instrument. It evolved with us in our teenage years. We noticed that something switched there, and
Mhm.
it's kind of a bit strange. But then when we are adults, we only think about the voice when we don't have it. For example,
Yes.
after a football match or a wedding that went a bit crazy on the party side, and then we don't have the voice. The thing is, when we have important moments, such as the first job interview, or when we have our first job and then we have to do meetings and presentations and the stakes are high, sometimes our voice doesn't convey our confidence. We can be confident in our subject, but the way we express ourselves doesn't convey the same thing. So it's kind
Mhm.
of, it gives a mixed message to the audience. And so, what I really love to do as a vocal coach, and I work, as you said, with leaders, entrepreneurs, and also with experts in many different fields, like from lawyers to doctors to engineers and people in finance and so on, is when you have a really good subject and you have a good idea, but you, for some reason, the way you use your voice, it's not conveying the message of confidence, clarity, and credibility. And this is where I bridge the gap between you being an expert and the image that the audience gets from you, and also if they get the message or not. So this is
Mhm.
where the voice enters, and this is where I help my clients. And as you said, also from people in academia, because you need to, you have to interact with your supervisors, with colleagues, sometimes even investors, if you are more advanced in the process and you are kind of starting your own startup after studying or whatever
Mhm.
you studied. So yeah, we all need to communicate our ideas in whatever context.
Mhm. This is really interesting, because I have been, throughout my life, I consider myself an introvert. I have been more shy, think, in the past, and have now I'm, doing a podcast, a weekly podcast with people, and so the experience of the podcast has, I think, changed my relationship to my voice. But one of the things that, thinking back, from before the podcast era, for me, I do remember moments where my emotions, maybe imposter syndrome, um, just and even, changing schools in that first day, having my voice not help me, engaging with the people that I was engaging at different moments, especially if I was stressed or anxious. And where I'm getting with this is, because it's an instrument we've had forever, we might think that, well, this is how it is, and there's not much I can do about it. But it feels, from what you say, that you can tune the instrument. Is that what you're saying?
Like every instrument, no? The funny thing about voice is that the instrument is you, is yourself. Like when you play piano, you have the piano. When you have a guitar, then it's outside of you. And the idea of fine tuning it is easier than with yourself.
Mhm.
But the voice is the product of two things: emotions and your physiology. And if something happens with your emotions, it's suddenly, if you feel fear something, or if you are stressed or anxious or something, that will immediately affect the voice. So it's like the first thing that you notice, like if, imagine that you have a friend, and that friend that day, had a really bad day or something happens, and then you can notice, like in the first 2 seconds when you hear his voice, that something happened, because the emotion is different, or
Hmm.
they feel sad, or so the voice and the emotions are completely directly connected. And so it's the soul, of the voice are the emotions. And so, of course, you can work on the way you deal with those stressful moments. And so, managing your emotions and managing your anxiety will help you to have a more confident, firm, assertive voice in those moments. For example, the first day doing something at your job, or when you're going to meet your boss, or when you are entering in a new
Hmm.
school or whatever.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. And the other is the physiology. And physiology, what I mean by this is that you have a certain pattern because you learned to speak by trial and error. So you kind of imitate your parents, probably your teachers,
Hmm.
your brothers or sisters, and then you kind of, and also you have a genetic. So we normally speak like our parents somehow, or because you have a similar body internally and externally, and so
Hmm.
that creates a certain shape of how your cavities, lungs, your height. That's
Sinuses, etc.
exactly, if I heritage the rhinitis, my mother's, so we have these issues that are genetic, and
Hmm.
also the shape of our body will shape our voice, that we cannot change. But what we can change are the patterns that our brain developed when we were speaking. So, for example, if you were taught when you were a kid that you should not interfere with adults' conversation, or you should not, okay, you should be quiet because don't bother, or don't, just stay there in your corner and don't say
Hmm.
anything. That is a habit that you developed. And then one day when you are an adult and you need to speak, strongly and confident and so on, you don't have that skill well trained.
Hmm.
So certain habits of, or speaking too fast because you have your siblings trying to compete with you, or because, so we develop our voice through habits, and habits can be changed, and also your physiology can be adjusted. So for some reason you can start speaking with a high pitch, but it's not even where it's natural for you to speak, just because you develop that habit. Then
Yeah.
you can speak like this, but this is not normal. Maybe it's not the best voice for you. And
Hmm.
then what we have to do is to undo some patterns and bring the voice to its natural uh, way.
Hmm.
So just to finish, there are these two things: natural voice and habitual voice. Habitual voice is what we think we have, by this is what I have, so I cannot change, but it's only because of your habits, like speaking too soft, too strong, too high pitch, too deep, too this or that, or
Hmm.
monotone. It's a learned thing. And then we have our natural voice, which is flexible, pleasant, as this all this flexibility and emotion that we can all have, but we only use this little spectrum of the voice and not
Hmm.
everything that we can.
And this is super, super interesting. And now, my question to you is, the people. So, but clearly, some of what you're saying is based on your studies of on what you were trained to do as a speech therapist. I think that's what you said. But some of it must have to do also with the experience you've had. Accompanying people and coaching people with using their voices. And I wonder how common it is that people who we might consider super, uh, uh, you know, um, how can I say? I need to find the right term, but that you might expect to be super good at public speaking. How frequent is it that they actually come to you needing coaching because there's some aspect of it that they feel is not optimal? Um, how frequent is it that that people even in positions of responsibility and of leadership um, actually come to you to help them deal with some vocal issue, or with maybe not feeling that the their voice is helping them reach the goals that they have.
Yeah, so that's exactly the target group that my clients are already very good what they do normally, or they are brilliant experts on certain things, or even if you are a CEO, you're already kind of in the maximum of your maybe your career, but they are always at the next level in communication. There's always something that can make you feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
For example, if you are very used to do one-on-ones, but then if you have to speak with a larger group, then it kind of makes you uncomfortable. Or then if that larger group, it goes from 100 to 1000
Hmm.
or 5000, or speaking in Web Summit or a big conference, suddenly you have to have different skills. Or if you want to do a podcast, it's different from being good doing a presentation or whatever,
Hmm.
or just going through your slides. So the vocal coaching enters when you have a goal, a different
Hmm.
goal that challenge you. That's something that is not maybe or because you are preparing for your next job, or you are moving from another function, or from another position within your
Hmm.
company, or suddenly you are an expert and now you need to manage your team, and you have to speak with them differently and inspire them. So every time you have a thing in your life that will require a different communication, a more strategic way to communicate, then you might need a vocal coaching.
Hmm.
So, for example, I was before this interview, I was like sneaking and going into my phone, and I have a HR director from a huge company, a global company, and she had this presentation yesterday in Boston for everyone in the company, basically all the directors and all the people that report to her, and she had. I have to have this impact. We
Hmm.
are in this transition phase. We are need to be everyone on board on these changes, and everyone is a bit skeptical. So I need to have this presentation to convey the right message. And so we have 1 hour consultation
Hmm.
last week, and just to be very specific, so, and strategic. So someone that can have done like thousands of presentations, suddenly you have one that can change your career,
Hmm.
and that's important to have some support,
Hmm.
but also for things that are less complicated or less
Of course, there's going to be specific
important.
things. In Yeah, well, important. I think it all depends on the context, but I really it feels from what you're saying that a lot of what you do and a lot of the advice you give is specific to the person in front of you. But because this is a podcast, and my audience are young researchers, be it in graduate school or just out of graduate school, or people with a scientific background trying to break into an industry. Maybe we could I wonder whether we could, with you, try to find an example, and maybe one or two pieces of advice for a situation that is, I guess, frequent in this population, which is, like I mentioned in the beginning, imposter syndrome, and that affecting how you present yourself and how you use your voice when talking with people who might be considering hiring you, be it for a postdoc, you know, for an interview in the academic space, but also outside of the academic space, because I think that's something that the Papa PhD audience are probably a lot of the people listening go through this kind of fear of putting yourself out there and showing your work with confidence, but making it or doing it with a voice that does transmit that confidence. You said confidence, that you had three
Clarity
elements
and
there.
credibility.
Yeah, clarity and credibility, which I think it was
We can
very
also
interesting.
add charisma, but charisma is a bit further.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's probably
it's
another
another it's another
another level,
offer.
although very very interesting and important. But I just want to add one other example, and I think we're finishing the season of them. There's these my thesis in 3 minutes, or in 180 seconds type events also, where students have like 3 minutes to give a very nice pitch and very popularized presentation of their research. And I believe that if we can have some advice for people who are preparing for this now, that'd be really cool, because I'm sure a bunch of them are quite anxious about that new situation of being in front of so many people and
Yeah.
having to kind of make an impact, because it's also a competition.
Of course. So there's a lot of, a few things to say about academia, and then that part of be prepared for a pitch, like 3 minute speech, because actually when it's shorter, your pitch, it's more in the degree of difficulty increases. So because you have to, every word counts, and the way you start, the way you finish, having your clear key message, and so on. But I will go there. In terms of academia, I work normally with, so I have some clients that are in their making their doctorate degree, or doctorate degree, sorry, the PhD, and sometimes more towards the end of it, so not
Mhm.
so in the beginning, because it when you start to have meetings, when you have to start to interact with the teams, or sometimes with other, or with companies that start to sponsor and support what you are researching of. So in
Mhm.
this part where you start to go on business as well, so not only inside the uni, but also when you need to speak with other stakeholders, I
Mhm.
think is where I can start, where I can help. Of course I can help, previously in the process.
Mhm.
But the thing is with academia, and I have these discussions with my clients, first is that you only need to have this certain level of uh, attention to your communication very late in the process
Mhm.
normally. So we are not all the experts industry, and I'm, of course, being a bit generic, but we are used to boring presentations, which is sad.
Mhm.
Like the
Mhm.
expectations are normally low, because like it's
Yeah.
very technical, you go into a lot of details, and then it's interesting because like it's like people take more attention to the substance than to the way it was delivered
Mhm.
somehow. So this is what I see, at least in Europe, as the norm of being academic, or even after, if you go to scientific um, conventions and
Mhm. Mhm.
conferences, you see that the level of delivery is not in the charisma even. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
was the message clear? Was the message interesting? It's like the first level. Did I got the message?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
going through this first level, we start, okay, the content was robust, was nice, was understandable. Now how can I do this in a way that it's engaging for the audience, and that
Mhm.
really transforms whatever they are thinking, or their lives, or I mean, it's interesting. So I see that working with people in academia, we are like slowly changing a little bit what's normal in
Mhm.
this, and I like my clients because they don't settle with what's normal, what's expected from them. They want to go beyond, as the name
Mhm.
of this podcast, in that regard, because they know that will help them in their careers, not
Mhm.
only when they are in this specific part of their lives. So it's an investment that they do. So they sometimes get nervous when they have to present internally to
Mhm.
their supervisor or to the
The
team,
committee, or
the committee, and then when they have to go to conferences and present papers, and and from sometimes you get exposed and you have this imposter syndrome, like, okay, I'm good enough, and I is this interesting enough?
Mhm.
And it's interesting, one thing that I see from academia and corporate worlds is, do you like to receive questions at the end or not? Is it a good sign? Because
Mhm.
I see that in academia, you are happy to receive questions at the end. Like you feel that you were more interesting, and you convey a message in a way that triggers curiosity. But in corporate, normally they like that anyone has questions, so we can move forward. And
Mhm.
so, okay, it was clear. Okay, next
Let's
point.
move
Next,
on.
let's move on. So I find this so funny. The way
Yeah.
you see what was a successful communication in one field comparing to the other.
Mhm. It's very interesting what you say, and we have someone here, Saba Aslani, saying in Canada it's the same in terms of, and I think it's academia in general tends to give more importance to the content than to the format. But I have talked with people who have said, well, this was a great conference, but there's two talks that were memorable for me, because somehow there was some storytelling
Yeah.
in them. The person had worked them differently. So I do think that, there's some people starting to consider that it's important to put a little work in how you present. Although, of course, in the end, what's important is the data, and that it's sound, and that it's novel, etc. But
But you can
again,
say the same thing. You can say the same thing with totally different energy and tone of
yeah,
voice and whatever.
exactly.
I have one example, a quick example, if you allow me.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
I had a client. She's a doctor, and she was presenting in a conference. And she had, so we prepared. She was super nervous,
Mhm,
really nervous to. She normally can't sleep before the night before. She's extremely nervous. She has these blanks when
mhm,
she was on stage. So she really asked my support, and we went beyond only managing the nerves and the stress. Okay, what's your story, what do you want to present? And she was presenting research that she has made in the clinic about quality of life of this kind of patients and so on.
mhm, mhm,
And in the conference she had another person just presenting before her with the same topic, but with only like slides full of information, very analytical, only data without message. This
mhm,
is one thing that it's the tip. What is the message, beyond your data? What is one thing that if the person just cannot remember anything, what is the one thing that they take away from what's new, what's different, what's in this presentation? And so we designed their presentation to start with a story. And I
mhm,
remember that she had even a picture of a boat, and she was telling a story about a patient and so on. And so on purpose she didn't finish the story, and then at the end she completed the story. So it's another technique, like opening a curiosity loop and then you close the story. Of course, the story was from someone that suffers from that disease, and what was the impact of the treatment and so on. But everyone was speaking about the story at the end, like in the coffee break, everyone was remembering the stories. So even for us that we are analytical people, like including a short, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to give a TEDx. No, it's not that. Just like a 1 minute, 1 minute and a half episode or story of someone that you helped, or someone that was affected by your study. Or that's interesting, because we
mhm,
are humans and we like to hear these stories, because they stick with us.
mhm,
So trying to be okay, I'm going to be professional and therefore I will not tell a story because stories are for non-experts. That's a
mhm.
myth.
Yeah, well, but that is a challenge in academia, and you can get criticized by embellishing too much. So there needs to be a very
Just the
very
right
well
amount.
measured, just the right amount of
Yeah.
working on the form. But I do think it's important, and I see a lot of people the same way. I see a lot of researchers and young researchers, launching themselves into science communication and having either a YouTube channel or a Twitter, or and putting their voice out there, although it's not always spoken voice.
Yeah.
I think things are evolving, and you see cooler and cooler presentations of
Yeah.
science
Thank
research out
God we
there.
can be killed by a boring presentation.
Yes,
Yeah, but
that's my PowerPoint.
yeah, that's by a PowerPoint. But who wrote in the past? Is there any book that science has to be boring?
I don't think so. I
Who
don't
who
believe
set
there's a rule.
who wrote those rules? I think we are in this century of communication and video stream and social media and so on. I I think the society misses the scientists.
Mhm, mhm,
There's a communication gap between what experts know and what society can profit from all this
mhm,
research and all this body of information that is like inside the same walls. And as a scientist, to be able to communicate with the public and to make understandable what you do. So when
mhm,
someone, so what are you studying, what do you do, you should have a pitch, like a 30-second speech that explains, like for as a kid of 8 years, that could understand what are you
mhm,
doing and why is it important what you are doing, what are the benefits of whatever it is for the society.
mhm.
And just a few details, but we don't need
Yeah.
to go into that.
I think it's happening. I think even funding now requires some aspect of popularization and of science communication when you get funding for a project. So I think things are changing. But now, just coming back to the human experience of voice, because now we're kind of getting into the wider and wider point of view of academia and research. But actually, I was going to ask something, and there's a question from the audience that kind of connects to that. Before I put the question on screen, I was going to bring the conversation to, so this is a human experience. It's a personal experience. Like you said, we're animals of habit, and the way we use our voice is is a habit. Is a habit we've developed throughout years. There's some genetics. There's some nature, nurture. There's different things that bring us to where we are today in terms of using our voice. And if, in my experience, the way I imagine things is that because it's a habit, it's kind of it's a default. If you are, let's say I'm going to present this 180 seconds thesis thing, and I didn't work with you, so my voice is the same I've used forever. And then I get on stage and I get stressed and anxious, and my voice goes to the back of my mind. I don't think about it anymore.
Of course, you
Right?
shouldn't think at the moment. No.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I imagine that to show confidence, clarity, and oh my gosh, the third one,
Credibility.
credibility, you need to activate something in your voice. And if you're just dealing with your emotions of being stressed, you probably you'll forget to do these things. So I think I have the feeling that you're going to say that there's new habits we need to develop. But I'm going to bring this question on screen because it has to do with this thing that it's a very personal and physiological thing. Alberta is asking, any tips on how you can prevent yourself from becoming out of breath as you deliver your presentation? And why I think these two connect is because, and I'm sure you have advice on this, how do we go from the habitual use of our voice to this very intent use of our voice? So now I'm going to be on stage. I'm going to activate this other level of usage of my voice.
Yeah.
And not catching your breath is one effect,
one good example.
one good
Yes.
example of how your body can be playing tricks on you.
Yes. So everything starts before the moment where you are on stage. So you don't activate nothing in your voice in that part. You should train, is like a backstage thing. So you
Okay.
practice your speech already with the voice variations that you want to do. So you have to practice and train your brain and your ears to listen to it to a certain way to create that habit. And then delivering the speech, you cannot be worried about how you breathe, how is your voice. You have to just focus on the moment and on your message and in the audience in front of you, because that's why you use your voice, is to convey that message. So you cannot be worried about technical aspects in that moment. I disagree with almost all of the experts in my industry when they say that you need to warm up your voice. If you do a proper job, like a couple of months before of that moment, you don't need to warm up your voice anymore, because you already know what to do with your voice, because our brains are smart. And if you use your voice with a certain pattern, with a certain way that it's more comfortable, that you don't run out of air, if you use the inflations in the right moments, words and so on, you understand that that's a better pattern. And then that's why you have to go back and start working on that thing a couple of even weeks. We don't need to go months before, like even a couple of of weeks or months is enough to change the voice. So basically, what is the process of changing from the default to a new pattern? So first, it's really important and what I do with my clients is to record the voice before and after any exercise or after a session.
Okay.
So you have your analysis of what you are doing right. So you can, for example, this speech, what you can do from now on, you record your voice. And you also, because you have to know that you are exactly on the time that you need, so you don't go longer or shorter. So record your voice, listen to your voice, and find things that you like. I like the proportion of 3 to 1. 3 things that I like, okay, I think the volume is correct. I think I have some intonation, and I think I'm conveying emotion. Okay, one thing that I don't like yet. Okay, maybe I can be, more. I can make more pauses, or I can make here a pause because I'm kind of running. So okay, so then you record again, and you just focus in one thing that you can improve. So you keep the
Mhm.
rest, and one thing you keep improving, and you keep recording. This is your do-it-yourself method. Also, there's an app, software that I suggest called Udly. Udly is a free app that you can train your speeches and get the analytics on the site. So you go there, it records. So it's kind of a Zoom call where you
Mhm.
enter. I don't know if you know that this.
No, I don't know it.
No, so Udly.com. So you go there, you have your Zoom, kind of a Zoom filming you. Then you speak for a certain time, and then you have the analytics on the side, like how many fillers, like did you have?
Mhm.
If you have non-inclusive words, how was the pace? How was, like, so you can, nowadays with artificial intelligence, you have some tools that can help you improve the speech. Even it gives some comments. The comments are not very good, but
Mhm.
I can tell. But at least you have some feedback on how you are doing, and you can keep recording and comparing. So with exercises that I provide to each client, and I have to analyze the type of voice and the goal of the person. So then I recommend the certain exercises to help you improve whatever you need.
Mhm.
Um, and then I expose you to this experimentation. So you will experiment the exercises, and you will see what you like and what you don't like. What is,
Mhm.
because we are talking about statics, what sounds good to you. And then if you like one exercise that you did in the session, and then you record at the end to see the difference, without the technique and then after the technique. For example, imagine that we are using volume variations. And so some words you will highlight and speak stronger in some
Mhm.
words.
Mhm.
And then you see, okay, how was the text without any variation, or at least intentional? And then how is my voice with intention, changing the volume in some words to speak with my, like, with more confidence or with more kind of intimate tone.
Mhm.
And then you see the differences and say, oh, I like this volume thing. And what you
Mhm.
do is the week after, or even 2 weeks, you will practice this in all the meetings, podcasts, phone calls, WhatsApp message recording to your family. And that's when your brain starts to get a new pattern, because you kind of get used, and that new voice enters in the repertoire,
Mhm.
of your available voices. And
That's
then session by session, I train another technique: tonality, pauses, articulation, volume, emotions, posture, whatever. And then you get all these skill sets.
mm. That's super super interesting. Just can you tell me the URL for Udly? Because I'm trying to look at it, and I
Let
wanted to.
me
It's is it like yodeling?
you Udly. Just 1 second. I will. Can I share in the chat? Yeah.
You can share in the chat. Yes,
Okay. Maybe the
in the
private one,
in the
or
private
no?
chat. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You got it. So
I
this is a
have it
free resource that
here.
I recommend
Okay,
to.
Udly, perfect. So what I'll copy here this, and I'll actually share it here. Uh, uh, mm, mm, and because this is a live recording, I then can edit all of this. But okay, it's an app that you use on your phone. Is that it?
I think it works better on computer right
On a
now. I
computer.
don't know if
Okay.
they already upgraded for the phone version, but it's under. If it's not done yet, I normally use it in my computer,
Okay.
and my clients also use this, and they
Hmm.
send me these videos. And the cool thing is that I, as a coach, I can comment exactly in the minutes that I want. So
Hmm.
if I see there's a transcript, I forgot. So you film yourself, you have the transcript of your speech, you can see if there's repetitions or if
That's
you like
super
the script or
interesting.
not. You can copy and paste the speech. So if you struggle to first write your speech and then try to
Hmm.
train it, and first do it kind of live, and then you
Hmm.
have the transcript. And that will also help your voice, because the worst thing that you can do is to write a very good speech. for your,
Mhm. Of
because
course.
when you want to read it out loud, it sounds awful. So it's better the opposite. And this is another tip. So train as you were speaking to a friend, and then you have the structure, and then you just fine tune it until it's better.
That's very cool. This is super interesting. I've never heard of about this tool. I use tools that are similar to this for to get transcripts and things like that. But this is sounds like a very useful tool and that anyone can put to use right away. I'll also add it in the show notes of the episode, of course. Now, going back to the breathing question that Alberta asked,
Ah, yes.
this reminds me of when I was so I was at the University of Lisbon doing my bachelor's in microbiology and genetics, and I was part of the university choir. And it was very important when singing together very long stretches of different music or songs to know where you breathe. Is this something you work with too? So when you record yourself, can you put? I remember we used to put a sign because there was like bass, alto, etc. We tried to make sure to not breathe at the same space, and we would put a little comma in the place where we should breathe. Is this something you can do also if you're recording yourself? And I'm always losing my breath at this point. I should find somewhere before to catch my breath and then not
Yeah.
have this moment of
Yes,
taking a
grasping
deep
the yeah.
the air. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Regarding breathing, I have this approach of breathing. It's different singing from speaking, and I will
Mhm.
tell you why. It's different. So the breathing normally is you notice a lot if you are running out of breath, or if you are kind of not coordinating very well this
Mhm.
part. But that's the symptom and not the cause of the voice issue.
Okay.
Okay, so the breathing is just the tip of the iceberg of other things that are, under the water, I would say.
Mhm.
So I don't waste a lot of time correcting breathing, because you are always trying to like do the direct method, like breathe well. And I had, when I finished my studies, we had a lot of brainwashing on breathing, how to breathe correctly with your diaphragm. There's a correct way to breathe and others are not, and so on. And I completely dropped it with experience, because it depends on so many things. So when you sing, you have to really have the length of that part of
Phrase.
the
Mhm.
phrase, and you have to hold and really do these long breathings. But when we are speaking, we have much more flexibility to breathe wherever we want and wherever we need. And also, the thing is that when we are speaking, you cannot respect only the commas or the full stops in your mind. You have to breathe
Mhm.
in between, even if there's not a comma or a full stop, or it's not even the end of your idea. So you have to breathe every, like, maybe 5 6 words, even if it's not a place to stop,
Mhm.
because this is speaking voice, and
Yeah.
you have these interjections, and then you change your mind, and then you have asked a question, and then so you will use your air in a different way, your breath. So basically, breathing must react to your intention. Breathing must react to also your volume. So imagine that you finally define that you should breathe in that part of your pitch,
Mhm.
and for some reason, if you speak, the microphone isn't working, and you have to speak stronger, you have to speak louder. Then you will have to read in another part of your sentence, because if you are speaking louder, you will, spend more air, and you have to
Mhm.
breathe sooner.
Of
So
course.
that's why you cannot kind of memorize where to breathe. You have to understand and listen to your body. And normally, our body tells us when we need to breathe, when our belly starts to contract.
Mhm.
So if you pay attention to what's happening in your trunk, in your belly, and if you get like squeezed, it's time to, or even before, to release those, that tension, and then
Attention.
allow the air to come in, and also through your mouth, and not only through the nose, because we are taught that breathing well is through the nose. And that's true for meditation,
Mhm.
for several activities, even to be resting. But to speak, we need to leave our mouth open, because otherwise the air will take too much time to get in and then we run out of breath.
Mhm.
So, two things: mouth open. The belly must be flexible going in and out. And depending on the emotion, the volume, the intonation, the pauses, you can breathe in any part without feeling that sense of, I'm running out of air. Because you
Mhm,
don't
mhm,
win anything just to say one sentence in a row. Like what is the the prize, at the end? You don't
mhm.
have it. And normally, just answering that question, one thing that really changed our ability to breathe properly is the way you hold your feet on the ground.
Oh.
So it starts there. And it solves probably 60% of the breathing problems, is to be able to stand without balancing from, for the sides or towards the front and
Mhm,
backwards. Because that, if you do that, you are in unbalanced, always in an unbalanced position, meaning that your muscles around the abdomen and so on, they are busy trying to not allow you to fall, and
mhm.
therefore you can't breathe properly. That's why you run out of air. So with some speakers, especially women, I don't know why, we tend to kind of move our legs and cross the legs and just lean in one leg and not the other, and
Mm.
then it will affect the way you breathe.
Super interesting. So you need to be find a position where you're
Grounded.
grounded. Excellent. So we're reaching the end of our conversation, but what I'm getting from what you're saying is the first thing that we mentioned was that voice is an instrument that you can fine tune. Uh, that the voice that we use day to day is based out of habit. It's our habitual speaking voice, but that you can I'm going to say something, and then please tell me what you what you feel. But you could even create a collection of voices that you use for different settings, and
Sure.
that's super interesting because it might feel, just said like that, it might feel artificial, but it to me it's as if let's say, I'm always going to music, but you can use a trumpet just like just open like that. You can have a sourdine, which I now don't know how to say, a mute. You can use a mute on it. You can, there's different ways that you can modify instruments to modify their sound for different situations, or for a small ensemble versus a big ensemble. And with the voice is the same, but the thing to me, thinking if I apply it to me, the first time I use, let's say, a different voice, I'll feel uncomfortable, probably with it, maybe artificial. But what I'm getting from what you're saying is this is an ongoing work that if you are someone who is going to be talking in public, talking with groups, etc., it's an ongoing work of recording yourself, hearing yourself, and familiarizing yourself with your use of this voice or that voice in this setting or that setting. It's like having different suits for different occasions.
Sure, exactly. If
Is
we have that for clothes, why we're not having that? And they all are part of our style. But sometimes you want to wear yellow, and sometimes
Mhm.
you want blue, and the voice is the same. Why are you always wearing the same clothes?
So it feels like you need to allow yourself to be uncomfortable for a little bit while learning these new and training these new voices, and I think that may be a challenge to a lot of people, this uncomfort. But I feel it's necessary, because it's an experience. It's a creation. You're creating a palette of voices that you can use in different settings. I don't know if you have a
Yeah.
comment on this or.
Yes,
Uh,
it doesn't have to be. It's I At least the way I try to develop voice, because it can be awkward to do voice
Mhm.
exercises, and
Mhm.
you, if you were a singer, you know that. And I
Yes.
realized that many of those exercises doesn't really fit in this professional world, or you cannot translate how that kind of glissando or whatever, how does it translate to your real life. So I also changed my methodology to be less awkward to do this kind of experimentation. And it's also it has to be a fun process, so it's not like,
Mhm.
okay, this is very awkward and I feel I sound different, and like it's a step-by-step approach. So what I do is like interviewing the person and try to understand what is the voice that the person wants. And also I have it in my mind as an ideal model. And then step by step, okay, is this what you want? Is this what you like? Is this fun for you? Do you like how you sound? And
Hmm.
so it's more a process of getting used to this new, it's like kind of experimenting in new shoes. And then you kind of, oh, these shoes are really cool, or
Hmm.
oh no, I don't like this so much. And so also finding exercises that you don't like or you don't feel comfortable is part of the process, and you don't have to do it if they don't make you feel good, and if it's not fun. So this is also what I struggle with people in my other vocal coaches and other speech therapists, is that okay, you do this like 10 times exercise, you do this warm up exercises, you do,
Hmm.
and like our brain, it's dull, it's boring to do this kind of things.
Of
So
course.
the exercises are a mean to an end, so it's kind of triggering in your brain a different sensation. And then if you like the sensation, you practice like 1-2 minutes a day every day. So it's not taking the weekends to practice, reading a
Hmm.
book out loud or just go to Udly like crazy for 3 hours, but it's like a short amount of training, but every day or like every 2 days or everything, that will make you like even sending a WhatsApp message in a different tone,
Hmm.
or in a
Hmm.
experimenting a technique that will allow a less shock experience, like okay, now your voice is totally different, because your brain will shut down that sudden change.
Hmm. That's super interesting. And it feels to me, thinking again of the Papa PhD audience who are maybe finishing graduate school or just finished, I guess, well, of course, if they can go work with you, they'll have the perfect person to exchange and give feedback. But it feels to me like, because communication is from a human to another human, if you do this with a friend, with someone who's also preparing to present their, defend their thesis, or do my thesis in 180 seconds, have also someone, a peer, some kind of peer feedback, and also accountability maybe, then
Sure.
you can make it even better, and you can allow yourself to, because this is experimenting. From what I get, it's experimenting, and scientists should have fun doing
Yeah.
that, I guess,
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
voice.
You need the tools to experiment, but once you have the tools, and the tools is, as I said, okay, there's volume, tonality, pauses, articulation.
Mhm.
You can play the pace, you can play with the variables, and then make it as a game. And having accountability partner, it's a really good idea. So
Mm.
have, and you can send recordings
Yeah.
to each other, and it has to be fun. I mean, there's nothing in our lives, adults life, that if you do it as an obligation, or like a to-do list, or I have to do this for my voice,
Mhm.
I think it doesn't work. At least I don't like to do things that I mean, it doesn't, if it's not fun at this
Mhm.
point of my life, like why learn a new skill if it's not to for me to have fun as well.
Mhm.
And so you can do it by yourself. The only thing that I don't really recommend is to kind of uh, force your voice into a certain area. So there's a very popular speaking from the chest, speaking with a deep voice and like this.
Mhm.
So, okay, this conveys authority and so on. And you can be hurting your voice by
Mhm.
putting it in a position where it's not natural for your physiology. So if you are playing alone or with a friend, just make sure that you are within a comfort range and not going a lot of beyond that, because otherwise you can be causing a voice issue, and
Mhm.
that will requires then rehabilitation and getting back to normal, and then you
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
start exploring again. So don't push yourself into limits that you don't feel comfortable without an expert to guide you.
Mhm. That's awesome. And just a last question I have for you. You mentioned TEDx during our conversation. Is that, if someone is, listening to what we've been just talking about, and thinking, I don't know, I don't have inspiration, I don't know how to change my voice, is listening to different, I don't know, TEDx, for example, presentations, a good way to kind of starting to have an idea of what these pauses, what these inflections can be?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you can listen at the TEDx in two modes. So pick one that you like. This is a suggestion. And then, okay, you pay attention to the content, maybe the content you already know.
Mhm.
But if you like close your eyes and if you listen to it, like, why do you like that TEDx?
Mhm.
what is the strategies that you can see that the person uses is like dialogues, and then the person changes the voice, like playing another character. Is
Mhm.
that pause that grab the attention for 2 seconds or three even, which is a long pause, by the way.
Mhm.
Or it was the change on the volume suddenly. So what did you like? And it's just kind of taking some notes, or even a podcast, even this podcast, like
Mhm.
listening to what do I like in David's voice and taking some notes. It's kind of weird, kind of doing this analysis, but I think it's fun. So why do you like a certain voice?
Mhm.
It's because the emotion that you feel, like it's because it's calm. It gives you kind of this warmth and sense of, this pleasant sensation.
Mhm.
And yeah, and sometimes you can get there as well. And sometimes, like, oh, I want to speak like Obama. Yeah, but I mean, you can have some characteristics, but you don't have the same gender sometimes, or the same age, or the same height, or the
Mhm.
same race, or the same lungs size, or whatever. So I
Mhm.
think what I really like is to find your best voice and not try to copy someone else. So do the
Excellent.
exercise of analysis, but just modeling it until certain point, but then you have to find on your own what's comfortable for you and authentic.
Excellent. I have a last question out of my curiosity, but before that, I'm going to ask you to, for those who are listening to the audio version, where can they find you? Where's the best place to, connect with you and ask you questions, and maybe, try to figure out ways to work together? Where can people find you, Inês?
So I hang out a lot on LinkedIn. So you already have here LinkedIn Inês Moura. And if you find Inês Moura, if you search Inês Moura vocal coach, you immediately go there. So
Hmm.
I normally it's my preferred network,
Hmm.
social network. And then and you can send me a DM, or someone who's interested in oh no more, or just stay updated on my tips. I normally share every week a few things on around voice, public speaking, presentations, and even for people that are thinking about selling their own services and they feel blocked a bit when they have to put themselves out there as an entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. I also have some tips for that.
Hmm.
But and then I have my Instagram, and my
Okay.
Instagram is at @inêsmoura_executive vocal coach. And so I also normally I'm also there
You're there.
every week.
Excellent. I'll add all of those into the show notes of the episode. Now, my curiosity, my question out of coming from my curiosity is, why do we why do we react differently to the same presentation given, with a flat intonation, uh, or given with some sort of, vocal work and some pauses, like you said, some highs, some lows? What is it in our brains that makes us, and I'm this is totally out of the blue, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this question, but I wonder whether you have an answer. Why is it that as an audience this is important for us, and that it
Is
changes our experience of
that,
learning?
that that's a great question. It's the break of the pattern.
Okay.
And breaking a pattern makes our brain pay attention.
Hmm.
Example: if you are, in the university, or if you are in a meeting room and you have the air condition running through the afternoon,
Hmm.
during the day, and for some reason it stops at 5 p.m., then you pay attention because of the silence, because
Yes.
you were not listening to that air conditioning functioning, because your brain turns off when there's a certain pattern that you can guess, and okay, that's the pattern, and it will continue. So our brain, to save energy, they shut the brain shuts the attention down.
Hmm.
But what voice does is to create patterns of, sparks of interest. So we will not have an audience paying attention totally in a flat, like high attention every time. You will have these waves of attention during a presentation, even a 3 minutes one.
Hmm.
So you will have a rise of attention in the beginning, and then it will drop, and then adding a voice variation can increase the attention in that part.
Hmm.
And then increasing the volume, it will create another wave of attention. Or making a pause, then it's another thing. So that's why you break the pattern, the previous pattern. That's why we pay more attention to a speech with certain amount of variety,
Mhm.
but not the final advice is don't overdo it. Otherwise, the pattern is not having a pattern. So it's too much information to kind of process. And so it has the same a speech with too much variety, too much emotion, too much of everything. It creates exactly the same effect as a speech that is totally flat and monotone,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's the pattern of overdoing it. And
Mhm.
so that's why only 30% probably of your speech deserves to be highlighted with your voice,
Okay. Okay.
not more than that.
Okay. Super. Thank you. It makes total sense, and it's true that that's what you said of when the AC shuts down, you're like, oh, it was on all this time, and
It's when you wake up at the end of the conversation, like, or of a presentation, like, oh, it's finally gone.
Excellent. Inês, this was great, and I believe that I have now in the Papa PhD audience have a better grasp of why voice is important, of how to work on your own voice, and this is something that I've never touched upon on the podcast, and I've never worked on myself. Maybe I will going forward, but it was really interesting, and again, I feel that you've given us a blueprint at least to start working on this. Even if we have, if we for us, or for those of who are listening who are in graduate school and preparing for different types of even presenting a poster, you can do this, right? So everyone now has a recorder in their pocket, their cell phone. You can record yourself. You can try to be maybe a little bit exaggerated at the beginning, and then chisel things, show it to other people, and have like this accountability partner system, like we said. And just the fact that you're starting to do that is going to make, from what I understood, the fact that you do it in advance will make that the day of the presentation, things will flow out naturally because you've done this process beforehand. But it needs to be done beforehand. And the other thing that I took is to not focus too much on, like you said, warm-ups and pre-presentation vocal rituals. The preparation is more important in your experience than something that's done just before you present. Nish, this has been great. We've shared your contacts with the listeners and the viewers. They'll be in the show notes. Do you have any last word of advice for someone who's like, let's imagine, because I was very shy myself, someone who's really having a hard time saying, okay, in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks I have to do this presentation, and emotionally it's really quite difficult. And whenever I try to talk, my vocal cords kind of tense up. Is there like a piece of advice you can give to maybe help deal with some anxiety that might be really preventing you even from letting your voice go out of your of your throat?
Yes, first of all, everyone sucks at the beginning. At every politician that you see, oh, he's so good, or every musician, or everyone sucks at the beginning. So if you are at the beginning of something, it's natural that you feel all of these emotions and anxiety and so on. So the only way to get through it is to do it and do it and do it and do it and do it again, because it's not something that you can operate intellectually. It's something that comes from experience. Your body gets used to be on stage, to have people look at you, and finds, even a Toastmasters club next to you, which is these organizations that are free. You can join a club and speak in front of an audience every week or every month if you want, without any pressure, without anyone kind of, okay, pointing your finger. Is a very constructive. There are these communities of people that you can just go and practice and practice. And what 6 months of working on this skill can do. It's like from day to night or night to
Mhm,
day.
mhm, mhm.
Like 6 months working on your public speaking skills can do a huge difference in your career. And I say, actually having the job that you want or finding that opportunity or advancing your career. So public speaking is the skill or one of the skills. And here I'm putting voice, communication, body language.
Mhm, mhm.
Like speaking to others is one of the most important skills that we can have in our careers. So
Mhm.
do it. and and if kind of look, imagine like your first episode in this podcast, David. You probably look back and you are awful. You have this awkward feeling like, oh my gosh, it was so bad. I have this feeling with my podcast as well, like my
Yeah.
first episode. And it's normal that you feel that the first one was bad.
Mhm,
So don't try
mhm.
to be perfect and just do it, and
I
keep doing
agree.
it.
Toastmasters is something that actually one guest mentioned, and I'm happy you mentioned it again. Also, if you're on LinkedIn, there's a group that is called the Pitch Club, and it's kind of the same thing but online. And it's again, you have I think it's a 2-minute pitch, or anyway, it's a short pitch that you prepare, and then people give feedback, etc., etc. So Toastmasters is great if you have them near you, and there's the advantage of being in person.
And also
But
online nowadays. Yeah.
the online too. See, so yeah, so I do agree. I'm super happy that you mentioned that as a closing comment, because I do think that introversion is probably quite prevalent in the audience, in this population, but practice, like I say, practice makes perfect, and in this case it is really something you can practice, and it's really um, again, creating this new habit will make it then much easier to just
Yeah.
perform whenever time comes.
Yeah, the first time is like torture, and it will
Yes.
feel torture for a couple of times. But then, like, surprisingly, like, it's not that long that you start to kind of feel used to that and looking
Mhm,
forward to that.
mhm,
And so it's between I avoid it. It's shit because I feel bad and I forget everything and I can articulate a word and so I feel silly. But
mhm,
if you play with the feeling that, okay, I feel silly, but it's part of the process, and then one day suddenly you are just speaking on a stage and you
mhm,
just, it's everything is there
mhm,
and you don't
mhm.
need to do warm-up exercise. So
No.
yeah, and so that's it, that's the process. And
Excellent. And like you said, you can apply it to public speaking, but also job interview setting, and presenting in the academic setting. It really can serve you professionally in many many. You also mentioned meetings because you're managing a group, etc., etc. I do think it's an important skill to gain, and it's a really good investment of your time. Uh, so Inês, this has been great. We've we've gone past 1 hour.
beyond, we want beyond
We went beyond the
the
hour.
topic.
Thank you so much, and beyond the topic too. But I think
Yeah,
we stayed
yeah.
adjacent. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time and of your know-how. It's been great. I think people can really come out of this conversation with really actionable items and actionable paths to follow, to start training and to start learning to use this instrument they've had forever, but they might not be using optimally, and that it can really help them throughout their personal but also professional life. So thank you so much
Totally.
for having been on Papa PhD. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, David.
So that's it. That's it for the live recording. Thanks for everyone who's been live. Oh, the name. So now I'm just looking at the comments here. Alberta, we've put the name of the site here in the marquee at the bottom of the screen, so that's answered. And Alberta says,
I
uh,
also check my website.
yes.
Is if you see the English page, maybe it's better. The
Okay, yeah,
one
yeah.
it's Portuguese, and then you have in
In
English
English,
on the top. Yeah, English.
voicepowerleadership.com
Yeah.
slash Ian. Perfect. So Saba, thank you for having been here. She said a fantastic conversation. Thank you. And Alberta says it was quite informative. So I think this is it shows how important this is for me. I think it's also important because people don't suspect how key of a skill it is until we start talking about it, and until they start, working with someone with you and seeing the difference. One thing I didn't ask was examples of before and after, from people you've worked with, but we can talk
Let's
about
do
it
another
in
episode.
another episode.
Another-
All right, so I'm gonna cut the live here. Thanks to everyone who was on the live, and I'll see you next time for another Papa PhD live recording. Have a great weekend, everyone.